Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 118 of Confessions of a Market Maker. I'm your co-host, Ray, aka All Day Ray, aka Razor Ramon, and I'm joined here by my Herculean co-host, former market maker, 20 years and current day retail trader, the revered son of House Street, the man who taught you how to think like a villain, and the heartthrob of Eastern Europe. JJ, how's it going?
What's up, brother? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real good. And our guest today, he started his career in options and futures trading in 1983 as an independent market maker at the Chicago Board Options Exchange, as well as a local independent trader at the Chicago Board of Trade. He served on the CBOE arbitration committee for over 10 years, ruling on disputes between traders and trading firms. Presently, he is the co-host of Tasty Live with Tom Sosnoff on the Tasty Live network, the number one ranked financial program on the internet. You know who I'm talking about. It's Tony the Battista. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. I got one more accolade you can put. I became a grandfather 48 hours ago. So
wow.
Now too.
Tony, congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thank you,
bro. That's awesome. Is that a first grandchild?
First one, yeah, first one. He's a masculine boy, as they say.
All right, excellent.
That's great. That's great.
Excellent. Tony, over the weekend, I was just going through your Twitter before you doing the podcast. I saw you were at a youth hockey tournament.
Yes, my son. So I've got 5 kids from 33 to 13. I got 2 boys, each bookends, and 3 girls in the middle. So that's my youngest. He's 13 years old, and he's a hockey player.
That's awesome, Tony. I grew up playing hockey myself, going to the tournaments. Man, I have so many good memories, some wild memories too. Hockey,
it's so much fun.
It is. Are you much of a hockey fan, like NHL?
I'm a hockey fan. I was never a hockey player. My oldest son, Nick, who's on the show with us at Tasty Live there, he was a football player. So I coached him for football for quite a few years, but I never learned how to skate, although my mom was a waitress at Rockefeller Center back in the day in the late 70s. And I could get to skate on the promenade rink for free, but I never really picked it up. It's too expensive a sport back in Brooklyn, man. Football or baseball, you can throw on some pads and you're done. Hockey, man, to rent the ice and stuff, it's just travel is just so expensive.
No kidding, Tony. My son's really taking a liking to hockey. And
how old is your boy?
He's 9 now. It's funny because the Florida Panther, I'm down here in Florida. Mm-hmm. And the Panthers start going on a run last year, so he starts getting excited. He wants to get skating, and I'm looking at the price of the equipment, and like even back from when I was playing, I always know it was expensive, but my God, man, the sticks, the skates, the shin pads,
wooden sticks for $15 now. $150 for a stick is cheap. So.
Yeah,
is that how much a hockey stick costs now? Holy cow! I don't have kids.
Jay, they're north of like 200, right?
Yeah, like 100 to 500, depending on how stupid you want to get with them. Yeah.
Is it like a magic hockey stick? I mean, holy cow, that's a lot of dough.
At 13 years old, all our coaches, we actually make them play in practice with wooden sticks for practice because it really makes marginal difference in most 13-year-old kids shots. And if they can play with a wooden stick, they can play with anything. So they have a little bit more flex to them. Obviously, they're a lot lighter, obviously, but to a 13-year-old, it means nothing, man. Put them in the right position. They'll play better.
That's a great point.
Expensive stick. Yeah.
That's a great point. Cause they're not getting much flex, right? No, not much torque, bending it. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
Some kids can do it a little bit, but most can't.
Yeah. I love it. Such a great sport.
Yeah, totally.
We didn't come here for hockey talk.
But, no, sorry. Yes, I got it.
Yeah. But Tony, man, I would just love to hear, and I know the audience would, and I know many are familiar with you, but we'd just love to get to hear your start into the market, how you first got the job, and then also I'm curious to just the general atmosphere of what it was like in the 80s, the CBOE and the CBOT.
Sure. I mean, I'll make a very long story, not quite as long for you guys. I grew up not too far from your pork store there, but on the other side of the river in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. And like Jersey or Brooklyn, if your father's a bricklayer, you become a bricklayer If your father's a doctor, you become a doctor. If your father's a hoodlum, you become a hoodlum. My father wasn't a bricklayer or a doctor, so I didn't want to stay in Brooklyn and continue that. So when I was around 17, almost 18 years old, just after I graduated high school, I drove my mom's Dodge Diplomat to Chicago. I had a cousin who was like a floor manager, they called him. He didn't trade, but he would managed Shearson Lehman Brothers, which was Shearson at the time, I believe. And he got me a job with a small independent market making firm called Brandt and Associates that's no longer around as part of First Options, which is still around, a much bigger company now, owned by a guy named Harry Brandt. And he had a deal because he was a guy like everybody else in Chicago, giving everybody a shot. The seats were relatively inexpensive at that time. They were about, say, $300,000, and a New York seat was $1 million. 300 grand was out of my league. I had about $300 in my pocket at the time. So 3,000 or 300,000, it was unattainable to me at that time. But he made a deal that if you worked for the company and you saved some money, if you had the opportunity to buy a seat and saved enough money, that he would put up the other half of the money. So if a seat was 300 grand, you had to come up with 150 outside of your trading account. So you can't trade until you're 21. I became a runner, that thing that everybody, talks about. What did you do? I would just carry papers from the desk into the pit, wait for the broker or the penny broker or the dollar broker, whatever you want to call them, write down the trade, the order, and then I would take the paper and bring it back to the desk. They would call up to another desk, and then that desk would call the customer and give them the fill. That trade only took a couple of minutes, but it might take an hour before the customer really got their fill. And the markets move, and things have changed. Everything's instantaneous now. So it took me about 3 years to start to save $5,000. So I needed $5,000 in my account. I had to wait till my Christmas bonus to get over that $5,000 number. And I started trading that following year in 1983, January of 1983. 21 years old, one of the youngest kids young men on the trading floor at the time. And seat lease was around $3,000. So if you only have $5,000 in your account and you're not profitable the first month, you are no longer in business. So it was very important to make money day after day. I tried to, everything was in fractions back then. So it was $6.25 for a tick. And I would try to make, 20 ticks a day, a little over $100 after commissions and everything like that. And, if there's 20 trading days in a month, I could make myself $2,000. I'd be down at $1,000, but I'd have another chance to trade the next month. Well, I was able to make, 20, 40, 60 ticks a day. And then I started trying to make eights, try to make 20, 30 eights, a couple $100 a day. And then before you know it, you're making $500 a day, $10,000, a month. And I was used to making, I was used to making $600 a month. That was my pay,
Yeah.
So, you start making a couple of grand over a couple hundred, and, I hear JJ in the background going, yeah. That's how you started. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I started a pit called Superior Oil, which was a oil company that got taken over, and I could no longer trade that product because it was being taken over by Pennzoil, I believe, back in the day.
Okay.
So I went to the OEX, and the OEX had just started. That was the S&P 100. It was the largest capitalized pit in the world at the time. Maybe some pits of the Mercantile Exchange would have a different story, but you had to make a decision whether to stay in the equities, which I was trading, or go into this new thing called an index. And I decided to go into the index, and it was the best decision I made in my life.
So Tony, how did you said you had to wait to save up some money before you could start trading. Were you, I imagine you were kind of like maybe strategizing, or obviously you're around the markets, you're thinking of like how you wanted to trade. I'm just curious to just the beginning stages and how you learned to trade.
Sure. So like I told you, I started out, I was making $600 a month. That's a true number. Before, I actually lived in a northern suburb of Chicago called Highwood, and my train ticket was $100 a month. So you got $600. They take out taxes. You know, you're down to $450 or whatever, $350 after your train ticket. You know, you got to eat. You got to pay rent. Rent was like $250. I had $100 maybe for the month to spend. So I wasn't gonna survive. You know, that's no fun being alone in Chicago. I had no friends or anything else like that. So I started a small business. Back in the day, there were no computers, obviously. In the 80s, everything was done on pieces of paper, right? You know, they called them sheets. And on Friday going into Saturday, they would print off these sheets, and all the market makers would come down from the beautiful homes in the suburbs and Chicago, and they would pick up their sheets and then drive back home. So, you know, there was no really FedEx or Kinko's or anything like that. So I said, listen, I will come down. I had a motorcycle. I said, I will come down and I will pick up your sheets. And if you live in the city, I'll charge you $10. And if you live in the suburbs, I'll charge you $20. And I'll have your sheets delivered to you before noon on Saturday morning.
Nice.
And everybody wanted to do it all along the North Shore of Chicago. So I was making about $600 doing that, you know, per month, you know, a couple $100 every Saturday, and doubling my, you know, my existence on this earth to give me. But the most important thing was not really the money, which really was the money, but I got to meet every one of these market makers.
Exactly.
So when I would go to their house, you know, at 11 o'clock in the morning, you know, the wife would say, well, why don't you come in, have a cup of coffee, or did you have breakfast? You know, everybody wants to be nice to you. You know, you're a 19-year-old, you know, punk kid, you know, driving a motorcycle, riding around on a motorcycle, you know, you want to come in my pool, like, you know, like they would. And they would have these beautiful houses and kennel work.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
Gosh.
JJ, I mean, for a kid from Brooklyn, I lived in somebody's basement. You know what I mean? Like I lived in the landlord's basement with my mom, and my dad wasn't around at the time. So it was life changing for me just to be around these people. They say, you know, you're only as good as the 5 or 10 people you surround yourself with. It's so fucking true.
Totally.
I learned so much from them. So that's how I learned. And then also standing on in the pit, you know, talking to the other runners. Hey, I'll buy those. Hey, I'll sell those, kind of thing. But it was really like, you know, buying or selling stock. It wasn't very trading like. It was just, you know, betting on a team.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I'm 55, so I kind of had the same kind of existence. You know, a little bit later than you. You know, before
I'm 61.
Yep. So yeah, it's like one of the guys who owned a firm was dating this girl, and her sisters were always hanging around. So he'd go, here, take her, get her out of the house, go to the basketball game. You know, I'm like sitting on the floor at an NBA game. This is amazing. So I know exactly like it. That's why I was so anxious to get you on the show, because, you know, the experiences are the same, and there's not many of us left anymore. So that's great.
Yeah, we're getting too old.
It's you know, obviously, like doing this podcast, we have on a lot of people from that era. It's just such a cool era of trading. And it's like, I just love hearing the stories. It's because, you know, it's just not like that anymore.
Well, it was the perfect time. You know, you could be like, you had geniuses on the floor, and you had street smart kids on the floor, and you had, you know, rich kids on the floor, and you had cops and robbers on the floor. It was just everybody, and everybody was equal in one way or the other. You know, if the guy was super smart, he usually wasn't loud, boisterous, and willing to put himself out there. And if the guy wasn't super smart, you know, everybody was, but he was loud and boisterous. Everybody like kind of hooked up and got their little cliques and friends. And, you know, what I need the public to realize is, every good market maker, obviously there are good and bad in every profession and sport and everything else like that, but every good market maker wanted the public to make money, because the only way I, as a market maker, was going to make money was if the public came back in. I don't want to trade with JJ or you or anybody. I want to trade with the public. So I want them to make $1. I want to make $3. That's all.
Keep them trading.
That seems so lost on people, though, right, Tony? I'm assuming that's why
they think the market maker's trying to rip you off, and, you know, no, fuck that, man. I don't need your $10 today. I need your $10 every day into perpetuity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. So just got to take a quick shout out to our sponsors of the podcast, Apex Trading and Top Step Funding. So any listeners of this podcast that have the skill to pass an evaluation can become a prop trader, fully funded by either Apex Trading or Top Step Funding. Our own Micro E Futures trading community now has many members who are now fully funded. No need to trade your own money. Keep 90% of the profits. To learn more, visit our website at microefutures.com. Tony,
Yep.
A question I like asking, people who come from like the floor days, I think it's pretty obvious, like the transition into the electronic trading. I guess, personally, how was it for you, or, just, I guess, general observations on the transition?
Like all things new from 1983 to I was pretty successful right away. I mean, but one investor's floor is another investor's ceiling. You know what I mean? So what everybody else thinks is real successful might not be, and vice versa. But on the day of the crash in 1987, I was able to buy my seat. The day of the crash, legit, the seats went from 360 to 260 or 250. Ooh. I had a 260 bid in. I got filled on my seat, but I thought the business was going to be gone. So I really wanted to cancel buying my seat, but you're not allowed to. It's like a binding bidder offer as a market maker. You gotta take the hit. I could try to sell it. There were no bids for it at the time because everybody thought the seats were going to go bankrupt. But when the market rebounded the following week, the seats were 360 grand within 2 weeks. So yeah, so I made 100,000, or I had 100,000 profit in paper on that seat, but I was never selling that seat. That seat to me was, my ticket out of Brooklyn, my family's legacy. There was always going to be a Battista on the floor of the CBOE. I had finally made it. I had bought my pork store, what I mean, kind of thing. It was a dream come true for me that I didn't know I had when I was a kid, that this is what I, wanted to do. But quickly thereafter, and I'm talking about quickly, maybe, 10 years later in the late 90s, I started running into guys that would have like computers around their necks. The first thing we saw before the computers was they would have these boxes on their desks, and they would have green, yellow, red, blue colors on them. And as the colors moved, all of a sudden, these traders that worked for this firm would be lifting bids or hitting offers. And, I'd watch these colors and nothing would be going on in the market. And then all of a sudden something would happen in the market. So they had traders at the Mercantile Exchange, they had traders in Europe. And as they were buying or selling vol at those places at a lower price than we had it, if they were buying vol cheap, they would start selling vol at the OEX. If they were selling vol high at these other institutions like the Mercantile Exchange, they would start buying it over here at the CBOE. So computers started changing the market pretty quickly, but I liked it because if somebody's paying my offer, I can go and buy something else, typically close to the bid, and I'd have a nice spread on, and then I would work that spread. And it was a very easy way to make money off of these people because it wasn't efficient. They were buying one or two option series, and there was 50 other, better value that they weren't looking at that I could hedge the trades I was doing with them. Because you got to remember, markets weren't 1 penny wide like they are today.
Yeah.
$50 wide. A market would be $7, $7.50. If somebody's paying $7.50, I could buy a spread that's theoretically worth $2 at $1.80 or $1.75 and sell it to these idiots at $2.25. But they have to work $2.50. You know what I mean? So who's the idiot? You know what I mean? Like, I was the idiot probly. But
yeah, those big spreads, you could drive a truck through those spreads.
Oh, it was so much fun. It really, really was. If you could tell me two options back in the day, any two options, I could basically price every other option on the board because I just looked at each one of the spreads. You just break it down into its smallest denomination, and you could basically come up with a mid price that's pretty close. At least back in the day when markets were very, very wide. Today it's a different story. But to answer your question about like computers, once these boxes were there, then they started putting the computers on their like they actually had like a belt around their necks, and they would carry this computer like you would have somebody in Vegas holding cigars and cigarettes back in the day. And Before that, you had sheet monkeys. These guys that have like these like scrolls. They would have these scrolls, and they would scroll through all the different like months. They were so slow. You know, I would make a market $7.50, and I'd buy them at $7, and then by the time they got to their sheets, they go, "Well, I'm $7.25 bid." Now that's $250 on every 10 lot. You know, if I bought 100 of them, it was $2,500 in, you know, a minute or two, and the market didn't move. The market may have actually gone the other direction. He goes, well, I'm $7.25 bid. I go, for how many? And he go, like, for 200. And then I'd go buy some other options here, and I'd put on a spread. I go, I'll sell you 200. And I would have locked in $2,500 before I even sold my spread to these sheet monkeys. Sorry, you're more of an ape, JJ, than a monkey, right? Right? I mean, orangutan. What is that?
Oh no! Hey, listen. My first job was, I was a phone chimp. You know, I was the phone solicitor. You know, in a for penny stock boiler room. So I've been
how
a
it
chimp.
goes.
Oh
He was a gorilla. They call him the gorilla.
He's a silverback gorilla. I got it.
He's a big man. He's a big man. I know we can't see him, but he's a big man. That's
good.
Yeah.
I went from bouncer to trader.
So good. So hey, that's that side of the equation. And then there were the other guys on the other side of the equation.
Yeah.
So after the sheet monkeys and the boxes, then became these guys that had these like straps around the computers around them. Then they were really quick because they could see everything and scroll, and basically had almost a touch screen, like a rudimental touch screen back in the day. So they got a lot quicker, and then they also got a lot smarter. Like, if the market was $7.50 and they saw I paid $7 for something, he, instead of saying his true bid, which might have been $7.25 or $7.40, he would say I'm $7.10 bid, or seven and back in that day, 7 and an eighth or a quarter bid. What do you want to do? And I'd make less money, but everybody's trying to win because their bonuses were based on how much under they could buy these options.
Okay, cool, interesting.
But it ruined. I didn't know it at the time. It ruined my business because a trader with a couple $100,000 in his account or $1 million even in his account, I was going against now groups and funds that had hundreds of millions of dollars against them, and they commoditized the markets and made them very, very tight and kind of ruined my game. I lasted until 2005, so I lasted a long time. I mean, in the OEX, when I left, there was about 35, 40 traders, and we had about 500 when I, at its peak. So I lasted a long time. I just had to take a lot more risk, and the risk wasn't it wasn't a multiple of X worth it. Meaning, if back in the day in 83, 4, and 5, I risked 1X to make 2X, now I had to risk 10X to make 2X. It was not as fun.
Yeah, for sure. Before we make the transition from there, I just wanted to see. I know you probably have a million stories.
Sure.
But I'm just curious if there's, maybe an unbelievable, crazy story from the floor days that maybe just one that sticks out in your mind.
Well, I mean, it has to go back to the 87 crash. And I actually, you said I was part of the arbitration committee, and I was part of the arbitration committee, but I had to go in front of the arbitration committee because I made a market on some puts. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was just making markets against other options that I was buying and selling, like I told you from the beginning of my story, that were mathematically impossible to be in the money, even if the market went to zero. So there was no way. So I made a market like on 100, like if the option was the 100 strike, I gave them a market, and I gave them two sides, but markets were deep and wide. Yeah. And I don't remember the market I gave him, but let's just say, for argument's sake, I gave him a stupid market. Like I was $95 bid, meaning it can go to zero, so I can lose $95. It can only go to 100, so I can only make $5. So I gave him like a market 95, 150. They can't go to 150. It can only go to 100.
Yeah.
And they bought him from me at 150.
Wow.
So so my argument was, well, if there was a better market, then the broker would have taken somebody else's offer or hit my bid. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
But so I made a market on an option that was theoretically impossible to lose money on. It was the only guaranteed trade I've seen in my 40+ years of trading.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, so what was the outcome of the arbitration meeting? Like what?
I had to adjust the price, and it ended up
Yeah.
costing me some money, but it was de minimis in its nature of how much money I made on that day. So
Yeah.
it was a win-win for everybody. The customer was happy, I was less happy, and it was win-win for everyone.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
they ruled against me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so you said you lasted to about 2005.
That's correct.
So 2005 hits. What's next for Tony?
Yeah, a lot of change. I started an online business where I was selling like diet patches and pills that were made in Florida, not too far from where you are. And I got into like a multi-tier marketing scheme, I guess you would call it, where I would sell these diet patches and pills for, let's say, $50 a bottle or something like that, and it would cost me, $10 to make them and $20 to sell them. So every bottle that I sold, I made $20. So I was highly capitalized at the time. So I went out and went this multi-tier marketing. I didn't really know anything about it, but they basically put you as the number one. If somebody searches diet, pills, trading, anything they searched, you were the first one up there. And if somebody clicked on it and bought from you, I was making $20 every time somebody did that. So it's only a matter of like, if you're making $20 on every trade you do, how many trades you want to make? You want to make as many as you can.
Yeah.
So I threw a lot of money at these multi-tier marketing guys that were kind of scammy and scummy. And I had, $1 million in sales my first year, but I couldn't collect the money because the money was in the Philippines with. I thought I was dealing with somebody in Arizona. I was dealing with somebody in the Philippines, and I don't want to make a long story short, but it cost me 7 figures.
Oh
man.
So and a couple of years of my life, and and my wife wasn't at the time happy with me, so she decided to bail on me there, and so the end of trading for me was bittersweet. I thought I had the great business that was coming, then I found out I was getting scammed because I did not know what I was doing in the online world in that time. And ended up getting divorced, not just because of that. I mean, I was probably not the best husband either. So there was that too. So I found myself in a state of flux after that. Still trading, up to 2005, and then doing that. And Tom Sosnoff had started a company called Thinkorswim, and he had asked me to come on very early on. He actually asked me to put some money in the company. I didn't think he knew what the fuck he was doing, so I said, I ain't putting money in that piece of shit. That was a big mistake. So I ended up after turning him down 2 or 3 times to work for him, because I said, I got to do my own thing, and I'm doing well. I don't want to work for you. I've never worked for anybody my entire life. From 1983 to 2005, 2007, I never worked for anybody. I never had a paycheck, right? If I made money that day, I kept it. If I lost money, I had to give it back. So I wasn't going to go work for a guy I played softball with, you know what I mean? And it was a friend of 20 some odd years back then. But then I went with my tail between my legs and I said, hey, I need a freaking job. Can you give me a job? He goes, you're qualified, but I can't pay you what you want. So, I can pay you this, and we're in talks about selling the company, and I can give you some stock and stuff like that. Maybe that'll help you out a little bit, down the road, possibly, if we sell the company. And I took the job and ended up working my way through the company there. It was a great thing. He treated me phenomenally, and I mean, we're still partners to today at Tasty Trade.
Tasty Trade, yeah. Shout out to Tom.
That's amazing.
Yeah. He's a hell of a. I mean, he's a good trader. I mean, I'm way better than him. I made more money than him in 1987. I consistently do better than him on a per contract basis. But he is a hell of a fucking businessman.
Yeah,
no kidding.
He taught me a lot. He's a genius. He's a genius when it comes to that.
That's what really stuck out to me during our conversation. Yeah, it's sharp businessman, and even yourself, always been entrepreneur, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to when I was selling Jordache jeans 2 for $25 out of the trunk of my car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those New Yorkers for you right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
fell off
That's
the
what
truck by the Fort Apache, the Bronx, and the docks in Brooklyn.
Oh God, I guess I got so much stuff. Tony, I was just, while we brought up New York, when's the last time you've been, or Tom, sorry, Tony, when's the last time you've been to New York? Any thought, like, I know a lot of people are like, I got family like, New York's not what it was before.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on New York?
My mom passed about 6 years ago, and that was my real last connection there. She was the youngest of her family, so all the aunts and uncles have kind of moved on. There's some cousins there, but we were like the black sheep of the family because my dad was a knockaround guy, and wasn't really one of the nicer people in the family. So we weren't very close. I didn't have a big family at the time. So last time I was really there about 5 or 6 years ago when my mom passed, and prior to that, mom kept the family, like a little closer knit, but I haven't been back in about 6 years. I haven't even visited my mom, which is sad.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So when's the first time you met Tom?
It was like he stood on the other side of the pit from me, so I stared at him every day and he stared at me every day, and the pit was probably 20-ish yards, maybe a little bit more from the two spots that we were in. So I knew him from the pit, and then they organized the softball team. I think you had JJ on the show, JJ Keenahan and Tom and Scott Sheridan. We all organized the softball team, so we all got together and played softball. And I met him really on the softball diamond. I got to know him. You go out to eat afterwards, you go have lunch, breakfast, whatever, and we forged a relationship from there. And then we would play cards every day. Okay. So like around 11 o'clock when 10, 11 o'clock when things would get a little slow, we'd go upstairs and play gin or something like that upstairs, and be degenerates together.
Yeah. Fun. I haven't asked any of the Chicago guys. Sorry, JJ, if you're trying to
about
jump
1983, 1984 to answer your question.
Okay. We've talked to some of the New York guys, and I know a lot of them would maybe like go play poker at night, some of the underground. Was Chicago much of a poker scene with you guys, or not too much?
No, not really at all. Like not like organized, like underground poker, like you would have maybe in the back of the pork store or something like that. Chicago had those places, but not that we knew of. It was very hard. You had to go to Vegas, maybe a little bit in Jersey if you wanted to, but you really had to go to Vegas to do that. Cause we would go on junkets, they would call them. They would basically rent a plane for us, and, you'd be you and maybe 10 or 15 of your friends and, 20 other acquaintances that you just met on the plane, and we would all go to Vegas together, that kind of thing. It was a shit ton of fun.
I bet it was.
It really was.
I bet it was, man. Oh man, that's awesome.
It was.
Yeah, so I had someone wanted me to ask you while we brought up Tom, is what's something unusual or funny about Tom that the general public doesn't know about him?
He chews pills. Like he can't swallow an aspirin. He fucking chews them, dude. Like heart medicine, like when he was having his heart problem, he's chewing them. I mean, you ever chew like an aspirin? It's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like he'll put it in, like a baby, he'll put it in like applesauce. Like, and and he's gotten so used to it that like when he was, when he's sick or whatever, like he'll just chew them. I'm like, well, like in between the show, I'm like, that's the most babyish, manly thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It would be a torture to me.
That's funny. Yeah,
that's pretty good, right?
That's interesting. I guess we all
you don't get that one unless you slept with Tom. Okay, that's the only way you feel that one. We've shared rooms.
That's funny. That's funny. I guess we all have our peculiarity.
I mean, I just wish he was into feet or something like that. To know that to know that he chooses aspirins is a little fucked up.
That's great. Okay. All right. So Tony, so current day, so they have your specialties right on the Tasty Trade website is derivative trading, using stocks, options, futures. Just curious if you just expand on what your current day trading looks like?
Sure. It's a lot less active. I mean, listen, back in the day, we were trading, 3,000-4,000 contracts a day on the floor of the CBOE. And, then I went to the Board of Trade for about 6 months where they beat the shit out of me. And I was so happy to get out of there. I was trading bonds. Those guys I thought I was a great scalper and at the CBOE. And I figured, hey, the biggest market in the world, they said, was the bond market. You're only trading one thing. How bad can it be? Those guys were so much better than me. They were so much quicker, and the size was just so huge. I had my biggest swings up and down there. I did not enjoy it. It took me 6 months to get back to even, and I couldn't wait to get my ass out of there and back to the CBOE. But for me now, it's a lot, doing the show occupies a lot of my time. I trade throughout the day while I'm doing the show. So I show about maybe 4 or 5 trades a day. I probably average about 15 trades a day. Tom averages more like 80 trades a day. We made a decision when we started the show that, listen, if Tom's doing a strangle in Tesla and, I buy a vertical spread or just buy options or just sell options or do something a little bit more complex or something less complex, that would just confuse the audience.
Yeah.
So we really, I only trade on Tuesdays and Thursdays that I show the audience, and Tom trades all day long every day during the show. So my trading has become a lot less. I do some scalping at night, when the markets are moving. We've got a lot less of that at night now. During COVID, it was a lot greater, a lot easier, at least for me. So my trading has come down a little bit. It's much more, customer support and answering people and stuff like that. It's a lot more forward facing to the customer than it is my own trading these days.
Sure. All right, I got a couple.
But we trade all our own money, and everything we do is out there, and we do it all day long.
Absolutely. So I got another listener question here, and it's around options. And it's so the question is, most traders tend to look at unusual options activity that the underlying stock is going to move up or down based on increased options volume one way or another. So the question is this a good way to look at such, or is this a bad way for a retail trader to try and guess what the unusual options activity means to the underlying?
Listen, power is knowledge. I don't know if it's good knowledge or bad knowledge, just broad-based, and I'm going to answer your question. So if it's helping you, like if you found success in it, whatever the hell I say, don't listen to, do what you're doing. Because if it's working, keep doing it. And then if it doesn't work, keep doing it a couple more times just to make sure it's you and not whatever you're looking at. I would challenge the customer to say, which side is the smart money? If you see there's no options trading and all of a sudden 5,000 trade on the offer, a grandmother from Iowa is not selling 5,000 contracts. Somebody else is doing them. Is that the smart money, or is that the stupid money? And who are the stupid money? Because I want to meet them, right? So I get it. Some things are good to know. Some things make you money. I don't think that's something that can consistently make you money. I'm not saying that, you'll notice that unusual activity and then all of a sudden 2-3 days later, I'll go to the upside, the stock pops and there's your validation. There's probably 100 times when it happens that you have this unusual option activity and nothing happens and you lose everything on it. So I don't think it's a viable, long-term, successful way of doing things. But if it gets you involved in the markets and it teaches you a little bit about the markets and it teaches you strategies as opposed to just buying ABC option because somebody else did or selling it because somebody else did, there's always 2 sides to a trade. There's a buyer and a seller. Which one's the smart one? Plus, you don't know what they're doing on the other side. They could have a portfolio of long stock, $1 billion worth of long stock, and they want to protect some of the downside because they're uncertain, because just like you and I, it's a 50-50 shot where the stock goes up or down, and they buy 10,000 puts. It doesn't mean they want the market to go down. They actually want to lose money on those puts. But it's hard to, I guess, if I can answer it a little bit better, I would say if you could find an illiquid stock that had unusual option activity, I too might say that maybe there's something going on there.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's like anything else. It's just another data point maybe to consider.
Hey, you know what? If you've done, I'm not a chartist, but if you've done your charts and you're bullish on this stock and you've been watching it, it's getting a little bit beat up, and all of a sudden you see some unusual option activity. If it gets you to click the button to make the bullish trade and you win on it, God bless, all power to you.
Yep, absolutely.
But don't use it as just one indicator. Like,
right, maybe something within confluence with other things you do. I think that makes sense. Plenty of sense.
Yeah.
All right, Tony. So I had another question here about the zero TDE.
0-day options. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard some people kind of, equate this to like a parlay sports betting, to kind of, I guess, like play on traders gambling tendencies, mentality. I guess we just wanted to get your thoughts on these.
Yeah, I was kind of bearish on them when they first came out. I didn't think they, for all the reasons you just mentioned, I didn't think they'd be good for the public. And I'm a premium seller, which uses a lot more buying power, a lot more capital than most people are able to do on a consistent basis. So I understand that too. To sell an option, it might cost you $5,000 in buying power. To buy an option, it might cost you $200, $300, $400, $500 in buying power. I get the allure of buying options. On 0-day options, I see the benefit of buying options, and I see the benefit of having long, like negative theta decay in your portfolio for 0-day options. We've done things like butterflies in 0-day options. I think that's a great way of trading 0-day options with defined risk if you don't want to outright buy. I love vertical spreads, buying a couple of strikes in the money, selling a couple of strikes out of the money. I hate openly just buying an option. I think most investors get shaken out, where they buy an option for $1 that's never going to become in the money. You got to buy something close to at the money or around the money or inside the standard deviation so that at least the math model works for you. I love buying back month options and even selling 0-day options further out of the money. So like if a stock is 100 or the SPY, just for argument's sakes, is 100, we use round numbers. You buy the 95 in a 5, 6, 7 day time frame, and you sell the 102, 3, or 4 in the front month, even on a ratio if you could, or a ratio spread where you sell, you buy 1, 2, or 3 in the back month, and you sell 4, 5, or 6 spreads in the front month, where you have a long delta bias if you think you're bullish on it. I like stuff like that. So I see the allure of them. I see the benefit of them more than anything else. But you really have to be strategy. You can't be a cowboy, at least in my opinion. I've never been able to pick direction, consistently. You can't be a cowboy and just buy or just sell the options. You got to be strategic with them.
Yep, for sure. All right, Tony, do you have people love the macro, the general, the macro economic talk. Do you have any thoughts, I guess, on the overall picture currently?
I peaked in 8th grade. Maybe JJ can relate to me.
Totally.
I was boy leader of Arista and Archon, which is the honor society in 8th grade in New York. It's only really, I think, on the East Coast or in New York that they even have such a secret society. You get a pin when you're the boy leader of that, and that's basically when I peaked. So I don't know no fucking macro views, man. My son went to college and became like a pseudo economic advisor, degree. It's all fucking bullshit to me. Like I don't I don't see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
But again, if it gives you trading is confidence, man. That's trading is all about confidence. And the best traders, look like the silverback gorilla. They have confidence in what they're doing. And if you have confidence because of a macro or micro number, it doesn't matter to me. As long as it gives you the confidence, all the power to you. Go for it, man. Listen, it's still America. I don't care how you got here, but it really is how you end the race, not how you start the race. So make sure that you're consistent in your approach. And if you're consistent in your approach and you've got the math on your side, in the end, you usually have an opportunity to make money.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's the best answer we've had, Tony, because I don't know shit about it either. And I swear, I feel like most of these people like talking about, I don't know.
Well, it's just, and I don't want to poo-poo charts, because if I grew up where I wasn't a market maker and I was looking at charts, I would show you the charts that work for me, because over time you find what your risk tolerance is.
Exactly.
The whole thing is, you can show 10 people who chart stocks. 10 different charts and they'll all come up with a different answer because of different time frame, different cycle, but it works for them. Or maybe it doesn't, but that's what they look at. To me, you get the same thing, you get a macro view, you give it to 10 different people, have 10 different time frames. And
I feel like it's evolving too. I feel like it's like constantly evolving. And like these people want to cite like how long has the real study of economics even gone on for? Like, I question the sample of it, but I don't know. I'm a nobody, so I don't even know if that makes sense. But
listen, I had a guy in the office, a young kid who made some big cash and blew it all, but made some big cash during the meme stock era, which I didn't make any money on. Okay, full disclosure, I didn't lose any money on. I made nothing. It was not worth my aggravation because I looked at things logically the way I had as a trader. So I was fighting it the whole time. Where he would say if it was on the Yahoo billboard front page, you had to buy those. And if it was on the back pages, you had to sell those. And it worked 95% of the time. And, he went from like, a small amount of money to a large amount of money to no money in, a year or two. I mean, it was it works until it doesn't work.
It's a long run game though, Tony, right? I remember
I've been doing it for 40. Hey, I've been doing it for 40 years. It's how I supported my family until we started Tasty Trade. I mean, full disclosure, I was the first of 8 people at Tasty Trade. I started Tasty Trade with Tom. I'm an insider. My role is different now than it was, but from 1983 to 2007, I never had a paycheck. So
it's a long run game, man. You bring up that era, the meme stock era, and I couldn't bring myself, Tony, because I come from a gambling background, and maybe it's similar. I've heard some people relate, sports books similar to market making and stuff like that. And like I'm trained to fade the public a lot of the time. You know what I mean? And so when I see like a bunch of these kids are buying this stuff, and I'm like, that's not sharp money. Like that's not sharp money. And like you said, you might get hot for a little bit, but it's a long run game. It's not sustainable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I feel the same way.
Yeah. I've been a liquidity guy for years, and I've never seen the liquidity of when the street took those stocks. Some of those deals were trading like 11-12 billion dollars worth of dollar volume every day.
Yeah.
And I would just sit there going, oh my God, where were you guys when I had 150 million shares of crap to get rid of? Oh my God, I could have used these guys, I mean, I'm watching these guys. I'm like, I would have, for 1% of that dollar volume, $100 million a day for like 5 days, you're done. Just sell everything you own into that and walk away. It just blew my mind at the waves of buying that came in, as an equity guy.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. I think we're living through some markets, and I was going to ask you, these markets, the way they trade now, the ranges in the in the ES, how thin these markets are. Watching Microsoft, Apple, 16 billion shares in the float, it trades less than 100 million shares a day. I mean, if BlackRock sneezed, Apple would be $5 bid. There's, they're so long they can't sell.
Right.
They're so long they can't sell. I've never seen anything like this in 30 years, and you've got 10 more than me. It's just amazing. They blow me away, these markets.
Yeah, but the game's changed, JJ. There's so many like I'll call them like derivative pools now that they offset a lot of these trades off the market. Now, hey, I agree with you 100%. If you go to the market with the liquidity, most trades don't even hit the exchanges anymore. You know what I mean? They're all done off floor. So I mean, the game is changing and evolving, man. You can't be a gorilla anymore. You got to start standing upright.
Oh yeah, exactly. I've had to adapt.
We all did, man. We all did.
And coming to that, I just wanted to say, the reason why we have this podcast is because of you and Tom and the folks at Shadow Trader. After my heart attack, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I picked up a book on candlestick charting, and I got a headache. I didn't know how to read these things. I can build a chart, to get retail to come buy my crappy stock, but I couldn't read a chart. And you guys, were the only guys that I identified with, because you were like the guys who taught me the business, the older floor traders. They're the
Sure.
ones who taught me. So I just gravitated, and I was just watching Tasty trade after my heart attack, and then this is
I'm
how
surprised you didn't get another one.
So I'm really, really so grateful for you
Thank
guys
you, man.
and how
Appreciate it.
you're, and not just me, you've changed other people's lives and made them, be able to like learn this crazy business and actually make a buck. And it's not private jet money, but you're paying your light bill, you're paying your mortgage, and that's really important.
Exactly.
And,
Thank
and
you. Thank you.
we're
Appreciate it.
grateful. And
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. My ex-wife might have other kind words than the ones that you shared, but I appreciate those. I feel good. My present wife would have the same thing that you said. So I appreciate that. Yeah, man, listen, I think why people like us is I don't have an agenda. I'm not selling anything to you, which there's nothing wrong with selling people your knowledge. We do it in a soft sell way. I want you to open up an account at my brokerage firm, Tasty Trade, which is just like Thinkorswim, E-Trade, Charles Schwab, or whatever brokerage firms are left. You need access to trade. I hope you watch what we do and you use my brokerage firm. That's how you help pay me. That's how you pay me back. Everything else after that, like, if I say I love ABC stock and I'm going to do this, and you go, God, I hate it, I want to do the complete opposite, go right ahead. It goes right back to the trading floor mentality as a market maker. Hopefully it goes my direction for a day or two, and then it goes your direction for a week, and we both make money and everybody's happy, and you used my brokerage firm, and then it's a win-win-win for everyone, so it doesn't matter to me. So I don't have an agenda.
For sure. And it's cool too, man. Like, you guys are just like guys from the block, you guys are personable guys. And I think that's too why you guys, people like you guys.
Well, we're capitalized, so we're able to do that for free. Listen,
Yeah.
Everybody's got to make a dollar. I don't, you can't fault somebody that has knowledge. And, sometimes when you give it away, it's perceived as being shitty knowledge, right? If you charge $10,000 for something, it's perceived, any business person, or psychologist will tell you that $10,000 is better than zero, because it must be worth something. So I get it, man. I get it. I get it. Everybody's just trying to make a buck.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tony, I got one thing to ask you here. And we'll let you go unless you got other things.
I got one question.
Sure, man. Go ahead. I'm
go ahead.
I was just wondering. Now, I remember when you guys came up with the smalls, and the creation of product to go from a trader to trading product to actually creating product.
Yeah,
that I thought that is one of the coolest things. And we don't have, people on this show. We have traders and we have businessmen, and that's wonderful. But to actually create an exchange traded product and an exchange in itself, I found that was just, that's like the top of the summit. Do you guys have anything that you've sold at, but are you?
We actually bought it back.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. About a year or so ago, the company that bought it from us had a little bit of financial issues. Still doing fine, but they wanted to get rid of it. They couldn't monetize it the way they wanted to. So I can't disclose what we bought it back for, but we bought it back at a very reasonable price for us. So we bought it back, but we have to change the products. The products were absolutely fantastic and phenomenal, but we could not get the exchanges to support them. Like, the Mercantile Exchange and the CBOE, they don't want to let anybody else in.
Yeah.
So, and I've got to give that brainchild to Tom. That was his idea, the small exchange. Donnie Roberts, did all the back end and ran it well. They did a great job with it, but it ultimately was, the exchange licenses were probably worth more than the business.
Mm-hmm.
So when we bought the licenses back, we are bringing it back. It's probably going to be back in January, maybe the latest in February. But JJ, you're going to love it. We created a completely different model, completely different products that were on the small exchange. I can't.
We
I
understand.
can't divulge everything, but JJ, you're going to become a market maker again.
That's beautiful. Well, I understand compliance, and gone are the days where we could bribe our compliance officers like the old days.
Yeah.
But so we're waiting. We're anxious because, I don't
know if it's JJ. I don't know if it's going to work. It's out there.
Hey,
the idea is out there, man. It's out there. It's the small exchange. Everything equaling $100 was brilliant and beautiful because futures are so fucked up. One future equals a 32nd, another one equals a 64th. They expire on different days. It's all fucked up. It was beautiful in simplicity. This is a little bit more convoluted, but I think the public is going to love it who like to trade, like the traders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
We'll see.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I've always just amazed at, an exchange from the compliance and the back end and the plumbing of it all. It's just,
it's a tough business, man. There's a reason why there's only 3 or 4 exchanges.
Yeah.
Because they're money makers.
Yeah.
So if it's like anything, like, if cannabis stores make money, you see them on every street corner, just like you see them on every street corner now. Banks make money, you see them on every street corner. Exchanges make a shit ton of money. You don't see them on every corner because it's very, very hard to get the licenses, very, very hard to get into the business, to break into the business.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, definitely we're gonna be on the lookout for that, Tony.
Yeah.
I was pretty stunned when I asked Tom, right? I asked him New York or Chicago pizza. I think he responded Chicago pizza. I was pretty stunned. What about you, Tony?
He's not the brightest man. I mean, he's a good businessman and he knows food. He knows food, but sometimes he just says stupid shit, right? There's nothing better than New York pizza. Chicago pizza has gotten much better. Like deep dish pizza, I don't think is what Tom was talking about. There are other great pizza joints, just like you can trade in a nanosecond these days when you can only trade in Chicago or New York, maybe Kansas City and the Pecos back in the day. Pizza's gotten commoditized. There's great pizza everywhere. I think actually I've read places say that California has the best pizza now. So, but between the two, for me, L&B Spumoni Gardens is the only place to get pizza. It's a square Sicilian slice, and then John's on Bleecker Street if you want the traditional New York style square, New York style triangle pizza. John's on Bleecker Street. That's the only ones.
Excellent. Yeah, there's some good pizza joints down here in Florida, man.
So I'm down in Cape Coral half the time these days. Well, not half the time, maybe like an eighth of the time, but I want to get down there a half of the time. Where are you?
Okay.
West Coast or East Coast?
East Coast. I'm West Palm Beach area.
My sister's there. Oh, I didn't even tell you this. And I don't want to get into it with you guys because nothing to do with trading. But I was an only child. My father had 2 children from a previous marriage that I never knew. My daughter does a 23andMe, and I now have 5. I'm the middle of 5. I thought I was an only child. I have 2 older, one's passed, and I got 2 younger. So you never know what life brings you, man. You never know what life brings you. I've got a sister in West Palm.
Oh, okay, cool. You bring up the 23andMe. My sister did that, and it's fascinating to see where the family isn't from Italy, and it was fascinating. And then just some of the other like mingled ethnicities.
Yeah, like Tom did 23andMe. He's all like Russian, Jew, like up in the Jewish, up in the the what do you call it? Like that belt where there's all the wheat and stuff like that. Like his family were conquerors, like probably yours and my family was. So I might have a little Greek in me. I might have a strong swim to Africa. I might have a little bit of like something down there, and all over the place. So I thought I was 100% Italian. I'm only like 71% Italian or something like that.
Yeah, Tony, I had some.
We were conquerors, man. That's why I was traveling. I wasn't hanging in a kibbutz, just making bread or something like that, like Tom was.
Yeah. I had some like some of those northern African countries, which makes sense, right? Because Italy goes right down into there. I had like Moroccan.
Rome and the Roman Empire was spread there. Of course we were going to go down there and taste the fruits of our labor. Of course.
Yeah, I did have a Moroccan girlfriend. Yeah. Some of those girls are they're pretty, man. They are.
They're all pretty. They're all pretty.
I guess we'll end on that note. That will conclude today's episode of Confessions of a Market Maker. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please rate and review it for us. If you'd like to join a professional supportive community of traders, you can join us at microefutures.com. Tony, let the listeners know where they can find you and anything else you want them to know.
Sure. Come to tastylive.com. Check us out. We're all free. We talk markets from 7 o'clock in the morning Central Standard Time till 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. We even talk on Saturday and even on Sunday for an hour when the futures open. So we're there all the time. Everything's on demand. You can always find me there. And if you want to email me,
You can always email me. My email is BAT. That's badass Tony at tastylive.com. BAT was my acronym on the floor of the CBOE. Everybody called me Batman.
Hey, there we go. All right. JJ, parting words?
Oh, thank you so much for being with us. Like a breath of fresh air. Man, I miss working with people from the East Coast. That's why Ray and I work together, and that's I think I'm like in another life I was a New Yorker. So,
we're a different breed. I don't know if it's a good one. But
it's
we're
my
different
favorite
breed.
city. It's my favorite city in the world. And thank you so much, and thank you for all you've done, what you're doing for all the retail people, and and we're very, very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Well, they've come to bat for me too. They really supported us, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. So for Tony Battista, I'm Paulie Walnuts. He's the gorilla of House Street. You stop so.